Did you know that a Texas civil rights leader has roots in Round Rock? To commemorate Women's History Month, our focus this month is on Juanita Craft. Juanita Craft, civil rights activist, was born in Round Rock, Texas on February 9, 1902. The granddaughter of slaves, she was the only child of David Sylvestus and Eliza Balfour Shanks. Her father was a high school principal, and her mother was a teacher and seamstress. After completing high school in Austin, Juanita attended Prairie View State Normal and Industrial College, now Prairie View A&M University, and received a certificate in dressmaking and hat making in 1921. Later, she received a teaching certificate from Samuel Houston College, now Houston-Tillotson College in Austin. After briefly teaching kindergarten in Columbus, Texas, she moved to Galveston in 1922. She married and worked as a drugstore clerk in Galveston for 3 years. When her marriage ended, she moved to Dallas, where she was employed as a maid at the Adolphus Hotel from 1925 to 1934. Craft was motivated to get involved in the struggle for black equality in 1918 after the death of her mother, who was refused treatment at an all-white hospital. Joining the Dallas branch of the NAACP in 1935 marked the beginning of Mrs. Craft's long service as a civil rights activist. A dynamic force in the organization and throughout the state during the 1940s, she was appointed Dallas NAACP membership chairman in 1942, and in 1946 was promoted to Texas NAACP field organizer. She, along with other members of the NAACP, organized 182 branches in Texas over the next 11 years. Following the Smith versus Allwright U.S. Supreme Court ruling, in 1944 she became the first black woman in Dallas County to vote in the Democratic Party primary. In 1946, she was the first black woman deputized in the state to collect the poll tax. She traveled throughout the state in an effort to convince African Americans that the $1.50 poll tax was worth paying. In 1954, Craft began assisting in the organization of protests and pickets over segregation. The following year, she organized a protest of the State Fair of Texas against its policy of admitting blacks only on Negro Achievement Day. Following the Brown versus Board of Education decision, Craft worked to integrate the University of Texas Law School and the Dallas Independent School District. She later fought and won to help enroll the first black student at North Texas State College, now known as the University of North Texas. From 1961 through 1964, she led the Youth Council in picketing lunch counters, restaurants, theaters, and public transportation to protest segregation. In 1967, she initiated an investigation of fraudulent trade school practices in black communities in Dallas. It resulted in the passage of legislation establishing rules for such schools. Her long engagement in civil rights culminated with her winning a seat on the Dallas City Council. She served 2 terms between 1975 and 1979. In 1985, the NAACP recognized her 50 years of service to the organization. She visited the White House on invitations from President Kennedy, Johnson, and Carter, the last of whom later called her a living treasure. She died on August 6, 1985, and was buried in Austin. Her home, the Juanita Craft Civil Rights House, is open to the public by appointment only and was listed on the National Register of Historic Places on March 23, 1995.